All right, welcome everyone to Table Talk, where we talk all things tabletop. I'm your host, the Bad Luck Gamer, with my co-host Glue Boy.
Hello, it's me.
And before we get to the topic today, if you're unfamiliar with the channel, we always get to the topic somewhere in like the 25-minute range. So if you just want to skip to that, feel free. We always chat, let people get into the chat here before we get started. So as always, how are you doing, Alex?
Pretty good. I can't wait to loosely touch on the topic already, because one of the big things that did come up is I'm also covering Lancer on my channel now, because we kind of planned this and talked about it on TableTalk, that we would or I was planning on at least seeing about coordinating it, and then it's like, oh wait, you're just planning on releasing this next week? So am I? Cool. Let's just pretend we fully scoped this out.
Yeah. I definitely think for my why you should play Lancer, I'll direct them to your video because I feel like it goes a lot more in depth than I'm planning on going.
Yeah, it's two different elements of either here's a method of do you want to learn how to play the game, go here, and then there's the do you want to just know what the world is and get the vibes to see if this is something you want to get invested in. That's what my video serves. Just is this a world you want to think about getting invested in?
Also, hi, Captain Sandy Pants. Welcome.
Hello. And if Monarch gets a buff, I mean, what's the variant frame for the Monarch? What's that one?
Oh, the
Isn't
Viceroy.
That kind of a buff? The Viceroy? Well, I mean, it's a buff, except like the bottom part of the Viceroy is pretty rough.
How much do you talk about Galsim?
Galsim? I don't know what that is.
Apparently it's a big thing in Lancer.
What, you mean the toes? The toe mech? Which, by the way, James, I do directly point out to make fun of Smith Shimano in my video, and I use the Viceroy as an example. Because, Jesus Christ, it is egregious. I also found it really funny in the edit. I was like, I don't think I went on about Horus that much, and then in my edit, oh, I did, in the video, I'm like, yeah, God, I wish I could talk about all the Horus mechs, and then I proceeded to almost talk about every Horus mech. It's the best company. They're so cool.
So that one guy says, so I love your Pathfinder content, but I don't really like mechs. Is there more to Lancer than mechs? That is based on what kind of mechs you dislike versus liking. Because you could easily skin Lancer, and in fact, Goombat Banwa has, as a high fantasy setting with similar rule set. And so you can check out Goombat Banwa, you can check out Icon, which is their other high fantasy game.
I've heard cool things about Icon, and from what I've heard from people, I was looking it up because comments of your video made me think about it. Icon apparently has some kind of similar rules to the pilot rules in Lancer, but a little more deep. It has some stronger narrative dice rules, and I've heard some cool things about Icon, so that's a good one to check out.
Yeah, I've heard good things about Beacon as well. Yeah, and that's another game we probably might check out. But as far as like Lancer's concerned, it doesn't feel overly like mech combat. Like, no. It's got its big guns, and that's kind of what I like about it, is it's got the gun feel. But a lot of the mechs themselves just don't act like how you would expect mechs to act like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and I'll also say that one guy, like, I'm coming at this from a person who does not like mecha. I have a couple things that are like the exceptions to the rule. Like, I'm a big fan of Titanfall. And I think Pacific Rim is pretty cool, but overall, the mech genre is kind of similar. It's just something I kind of look at. I'm like, it's not fully for me. I get the whole idea of big robots fighting is cool, but to me, like the giant size stuff, it's like, I don't know, it's a little slow. I'm never like Gundam and stuff's never appealed to me. It's never been my thing. Lancer, though, is probably like the coolest thing I've ever encountered and makes me really love mechs because there's so many mechs in Lancer that I don't feel like they're mechs, which honestly, just look into Horus. Anything in the Horus tree is like, this is so cool. This is the coolest shit ever because it's like, what the fuck is going on? Like the company. It's so cool. It's also the reason I'm not a big Smith Shimano fan because I look at it, I'm like, I see the inspiration. This is very like, this feels a lot more Gundam and Evangelion, which is dope for people who like those products. I'm not as big into them, so like, I'm not as attached. Though they still have very cool mechs, despite saying that. They're just not my favorite.
I can't shake the whole Power Rangers Zord vibe, lol. I mean, yeah, the thing is, these mechs are not like
No.
so slow and clunky. In fact, if
They're pretty quick.
if you're familiar with Armored Core, it's more similar to Armored Core. And
Yeah,
that's what I like.
that's a bit
personally.
more. It's a bit more close to Armored Core. And I love Armored Core as well. Actually, Armored Core is really fun. You know what? That's fair. I'm saying someone who has an outside view of Evangelion. I have not seen it, but I know enough about it to also know that I reportedly would enjoy Evangelion.
I think it's weird enough you would.
I think I like me some weird shit and heavy religious vibes. That's my shit.
I like how we're like, okay, we'll get talking 25 minutes and no one can shut up about Lancer. I think that's a pretty good take on what Lancer, means to the tabletop community.
Yeah, the alternative, Cam, is if you ask me the question, what have you been up to? What the other answer is, hey Cam, I've been playing Persona 3 for a week straight. I'm not gonna rant about Persona 3, which by the way is great. Persona 3 Reload is fantastic and is very good. It's like Persona 5, but well written. I've been telling people, it's not my nuanced full opinion. Don't take me out of context, chat. Even though I just said it verbatim.
But since everyone's already chomping at the bit, like there's no reason to hold back. So, this topic really came up mostly because one, I've been covering Lancer now for actually quite a while, and my content has been gaining a lot of traction in the content sphere. The channel still just doesn't have that big algorithm kick that will let a lot of people see it, but when it does, I guarantee this channel will probably be one of the biggest Lancer channels out there. And with that in consideration, it's really made me take a look at Lancer and everything it offers, and just its general popularity, because honestly, when you talk TTRPGs nowadays, Lancer is always one of the first games that people brings up. And I think it's, what Mamu Spinto has said here, I love mechs and giant robots. Yeah, that's kind of like the thing. There's a lot of people who like that kind of stuff who haven't had a good TTRPG that isn't like Battle Mech or Battletech or whatever, who want fast, high-paced mechs.
Yeah, because I tried getting into Battletech or at least through the video game, and it was like playing it. I'm like, man, this is so crunchy but slow that I was like, I'm fucking bored, and I stopped playing it.
Yeah.
Like Lancer is the thing where I'm like, this is my shit. I cannot wait for the video game. Lancer Tactics is gonna be very fun.
That one guy. So you play as a pilot. Are their mechs always big? No. Are there smaller ones like we saw in Anthem? Yes. Size 1/2 mechs, which there are a few, and I have to say, some of the most banger mechs in the game are the battle suit mechs, essentially.
True, honestly.
The Caliban kicks so much ass. It's so good.
Yeah. The Caliban that is like, hey, I'm treated as the biggest mech if I shoulder check you. Inflict knockback forehead. Or like the you know what? The Atlas is not one of my favorite mechs. I do respect it. I think the Atlas, the idea of a power suit that was developed of, we need to kill kaiju. What do we do? Put them in a power suit, give them Attack on Titan grapple hooks, and give them implants of pilot muscle memory for this cool fighting style to kill kaiju. I think that is sick. That's so fucking cool.
Yeah, I mean sizes are kind of varied, but like there are actual like size 1/2 mechs are like 8 feet tall. You know, a size 1 mech is like 2 stories tall, give or take. A size 2 mech is sometimes more, like sometimes they're like another story taller, sometimes more. It depends on how lanky the mech design is. And then size 3 mechs are literal like walking skyscrapers, like 10-floor buildings. They're
Yeah, the
insane.
Barbarossa with the gravity gun siege cannon.
Yeah. I mean, it literally has embedded onto it a giant cannon from a spaceship. So that's
I it, you know,
it's
it
so
was
good.
something that was pointed out to me in my comments of my video. One thing I really now appreciate a lot more about Harrison Armory is if you read through the licenses, there are a lot of times that like the flavor text is some corporate like military guy being, this shit is too complex in like science mumbo jumbo. I don't care. Here is
Yeah.
how to kill somebody with it.
Yeah.
It's like
That's
that's so Harrison Armory.
that's very Harrison Armory, yeah. And that's like another aspect to it as well. Like not only are a lot of the mech's just really cool, like aesthetically and mechanically interesting. Like so many of the mechs play vastly different. But in addition to that, they're modular, so you can do everything yourself. So everyone always has their favorite builds. But the setting also really good. I mean, you can see some of the art here behind me, done by, oh crap, it's Dropkick.
Dropkick Orbital.
Orbital Dropkick. That's what it is.
Yeah, Orbital Dropkick. Also, the guy who he's mainly known for Kill 6 Billion Demons, his webcomic. He's a
Yeah.
very cool guy.
Very cool, very great art. I'm so excited for the Dark Horse collaboration they're doing to get physical books out. I'm definitely gonna be getting one myself.
I want to as well.
And I feel like the setting is something that they made so open so that you can kind of do stuff with. But the great thing about it is with each successive book they're doing, they're actually expanding the setting to different parts of like the setting, whether it's like the Long Rim, or we're talking about the Karakin Baronies, or we're talking about the something Cascade, I can't remember, from Solstice Reign. Like every new book adds more things, more places to go, and more places to interact with for each thing. And they always come with new mechs, typically, new talents that you can get into. Like, it's something that I thoroughly enjoy. Does the core book have some issues? I think there is. And does the game overall have its issues? Yes. I wish pilots felt more impactful to the narrative overall.
I think so. What game doesn't have its issues at the end of the day, like inherently?
Yeah, but
I think that is it's Lancer's biggest flaw is I understand. I think the idea is like to not have an overall just massive crunchy system, but it does feel like they're trying to play like majorly two sides of one hyper crunchy combat system with mechs, and then the other like super rules light, just narrative play. When I feel like you can make the pilots have a bit more function. I don't feel like you had to go as rules light, to be honest.
Yeah, and that one guy, is your PC or your pilot helpless? No, they are helpless compared to like a mech, but if you want your pilot to be a badass, you literally can. The problem is there's just no depth to it, because it's like you get like a skill. It's like apply fist to faces, and that's essentially, and the trigger could be anything. The trigger could be kill quietly if you really want to, and then you roll against the GM's like set DC, which is not typically higher than 10. Usually it's a D20 game. The DCs are 10. The DM might say this is a difficult action, so you roll a D6 and subtract it from the roll. But your character could potentially have something like, my character was a hired assassin before becoming a Lancer pilot, and you could invoke your background to get advantage accuracy, which would counteract it. So you just be a D20 plus potentially up to a +6 from the trigger itself, which all sounds so complicated, but in actuality, it's I have a +6 and my background says I'm good at this. Worst case scenario, I'm just rolling with my +6 and I need to get a 10 or higher. So you have an insanely high chance to just like murk someone. Maybe with some consequences, depending on the kind of check. But, you know, like you can do some interesting stuff narratively. The problem is it is not super impactful, and every character can easily just have one really high kill skill if they really wanted to. One really high kill trigger, you know. It feels empty. And that's the part that sucks. It's not that there's not good ideas. In fact, we have a live play. And all the characters in the live play had super crazy backgrounds. Hey, Fly Rocky, thanks for the follow. Had super interesting backgrounds that affected the story. We had one of the party members was a Smith Shimano kind of like higher up child, like their child, and that got the group like access to some Smith Shimano tech and like a Smith Shimano black metal like ship that could heal itself if you give it enough time. That's all really, really cool. But there wasn't anything mechanical to that. It was just narratively implied. And then with the reserve systems and how some tech stuff can go out, like you can just do a lot of things without mechanical weight behind it. That doesn't make it bad. I mean, Rules Light is good. It's something that I think the overall problem is you're excited to play mechs. You're not excited to play your pilot.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the downside of the game.
I think so, and I also think James makes a good point of someone writing a mecha game with pilots and mechs it's just a difficult balance to walk between. Too much in either direction can make or break it, which also is why I'm excited for your project, since you teased the indulging me on my Titanfall 2 tabletop fantasies, because please, no one has given me that in so long. But I mean, Lancer does let you do a little bit of it. Granted, it's only with the one talent, where you get like a shield and lets you jump out of your mech and you can do some like support skills. But essentially, it's a thing you have to build into and have some other combos that work with it. You can do it, but you're not like a Titanfall pilot. You're not going around like rodeoing enemy mechs, taking out their power cores, doing cool shit. Like that's not the point. And Lancer, I think, is also one of those games where it's like, if you're going into it, you're getting in what you invest in it, and other people, I guess, just have different levels of investment they get out of Mechanical Crunch, and you know, and also we've had the discussions of with the chat here of rules light, rules heavy. What do people prefer? And so it does a bit of both, and so what you prefer is what you're gonna like line up with. Because me personally, I think the open-endedness of like the pilot stuff in Lancer is a benefit. I think not getting bogged down with too much stuff can be a good thing. Just having a lot of fun stuff happening in this universe and just the game kind of giving you a thumbs up. But I also do agree that I think there should just be more chunk to the pilots. I wish they had more impact, because I think it would allow campaigns and missions to have more stuff to do. Because I really liked your idea in that one mission where like some people went in not with their mechs or with half-size mechs, and they went in to like it was happening at the same time. I think you can do some really cool stuff like that, and if the pilots had a little bit more chunk to it, that could pay off a little stronger than just like you have the one attack skill with like no other real skills outside of mech stuff. I'm not even saying like a full-on like give me a 1-to-1 for Lancer combat but on foot. Just give me a little something more.
Yeah, that's the thing, like, and kind of Dev Phoenix has been saying a lot of what I've been thinking, which is just, hey, what if you just Starfinder 2 and Lancer together? You know, just have a dual campaign. Yeah, sure. Individual character stuff, you have a lot going on, but I mean, at least your pilot could be, you know, a cool Starfinder character rather than a guy with like several skills.
True. Was that the James? Was that the stuff in the Karakin book, the bond system? Because I remember I was reading about that. It's one of the books I don't have.
I think that might have been the Long Rim. I can't remember.
So I remember reading that they gave some new pilot stuff in one of those books. Yeah, bond system. I remember hearing that it adjusted some stuff. And then I know that there's a third party book, Enhanced Combat, that I think does some other extra bumps to it, but that's third party. Even though I know the Lancer crew apparently have given their support to Enhanced Combat. Oh, it's for GMs. Okay. Oh yeah, because it gives a bunch of really cool tools and combat encounters.
I will say though, if you're not super into sci-fi, starting off with just the core Lancer book is a little overwhelming. I honestly have to say I was pretty overwhelmed running the first our Lancer game, because it's just like I didn't have the same wealth of information to pull from for like everything, and I wasn't as familiar with Lancer as like I am getting more and more. And like, while some of the other books does fix this, I do feel like that's also just a weakness with the beginning book. So much is open-ended that it just feels like you don't have anything to latch onto really as like a GM. For like, okay, but what happens? Like, how do I do this or whatever? That's why like stuff like The Long Rim was a really good book to start off with, and they were really smart to start off with that, because it's one where it's like piracy is a lot more common than the Long Rim, and systems are so disconnected, especially because OmniNet is like not everywhere, that you have some more interesting stuff to get to. But the core book, I have a hot take. I don't like GMing Lancer. I like GMing Lancer. I think my problem mostly is just I don't have a good enough knowledge of the setting, and the core book really doesn't offer a lot of things to actually like latch on to. A lot of interesting things, like a game. And to be fair, the core book wasn't necessarily much better, but like one of the games I always tout for having a really good like world book was Anima Beyond Fantasy, because just reading through, I've read through the world book so many times because there's so many interesting adventures, so many interesting characters for your party to like interact with, meet, events going on that the party can like interact with. It was really good, and that's something I really wish Lancer had as something that you could build off of. I would much rather they give you something that's a lot more easy to build off of than to give you such an open sandbox that you don't even know where to start.
I wonder. I think then a good idea, or at least a hopeful, is, well, I hope uh are they updating the core book for the Dark Horse, or is it
I
just gonna
don't
be a
think
direct?
so. I think they're going to like change up the layout and stuff like that, but I don't know if they're
Okay,
going to be actually changing the actual contents too
that's
much.
fair. I do hope that at some point, I think a world book for Lancer would be a really cool thing. At just create like a giant world book to flesh out everything, really detail on like all the factions, all the areas, like give as much stuff as possible to detail all the possible locations they have written out to I guess solve that problem of give GMs places to like inspire them to tell stories at.
Yeah.
Like give example like diasporan worlds, give example like core worlds, like all that. Just lay out a bunch of stuff. I think it'd be just a solid idea from them, and also if then from people who aren't even like GMs, a bunch of players would buy that, because I imagine the art would go hard, the lore
Yeah.
would go crazy.
I mean, like, honestly, all they really need to do is just pick like a system or a couple planets and go super into detail on them, detail the people that players can meet, all that kind of stuff. If anything, just to show as like a guideline for how players might do their own world stuff.
Yeah, that's what 40k does. Whenever a
Yeah.
40k tabletop game comes out, because 40k is massive as it is as a universe, but anytime a tabletop game is made, they always create a system that the core book takes place on. That is like hyper detailed, the one system that that it'll all happen in, and then other books might deviate from that system. But at least to lay out the players in that area so the book isn't overwhelming. Which I always thought was a really smart idea.
I really like the chapter 1 of PC 1, Player Core 1.
Player Core 1.
Because they have a great intro. Oh, for Galarian. Okay, I was just like, what's PC 1 and Lancer? Yeah. Yeah, in fact, even in the original release for Pathfinder, like, I got so inspired by the Eye of Dread section in the core book that I made some of my first campaigns just focus on the Eye of Dread, because it's such an interesting region just there. And it was a good way to do it. Lancer is just, it's a game that's got so much spirit and it's such a good community behind it as well. It makes it hard for me to be like, yeah, but there are some pretty like glaring flaws. None that ruin what you actually play Lancer for, which is the mechs. That's great. That's completely fine. The problem is like your pilots feel lacking in comparison to the mech part, and the setting is just, it's really hard to build off of if you're just not super into not high fantasy, like sci-fi. If you love sci-fi, if you consume tons of sci-fi, it'd be pretty easy for you, I imagine, to create.
It is very easy for me. I love sci-fi.
To create a thing. But like if it's not much your wheelhouse and it's not something you overly like think about, fantasize about, whatever, it's a little much in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And they just need just like a, here is this system, They kind of did that a little bit with Solstice Reign, because they talk about like a set of systems where like in the setting of Solstice Reign, like the main planet the players are working out of, those people don't even know about like what Union is. Like the general population of the planet don't know that the universe is so like spread out with humanity.
Oh yeah, I mean, you might read about Union on like little blurbs on the OmniNet, but when you've seen zero proof of it, there's a lot of people in the universe too who think that Union is just like a conspiracy theory.
Well, that's not even what I'm
made up
talking
on, like,
about.
A fairy tale.
The government on the planet like limits OmniNet access and everything.
Oh.
They don't know that there's humanity outside of their system.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Well, that's sick.
So, the planet, like, because the people who are controlling the planets are, they want to have a tighter control on the populace, more or less. And there's all kinds of different ways you can run this setting as well. I mean, hell, you can run a whole Lancer, like, campaign based on being a group of, like, world settlers where you're going to a super dense, like, hyper vegetated, hyper fauna planet, and your objective is to settle it, and you have to do various things to ensure that the planet, like, does well, whether it's going out and fighting kaiju or dangerous creatures, whether it's dealing with locating important resources and then clearing those areas up. I mean, you could have a whole mission based on guarding a quarry, because the sounds of the drills and everything pisses the forest off, and people, creatures will come and like attack it because they feel like it's attacking their territory.
I could feel you could just port the plot of Armored Core 6 into Lancer, and it'd fit like perfectly fine. I think it's that thing of, we all love Lancer, but it's healthy to critique a game. Like Lancer has some problems. Yeah, someone who adores sci-fi, and I am hooked in it completely. I adore the world. I absorb that shit like so easily. I also would love a world book. I would love a world book just to consume, to be honest, but I also do think that it's some fair points for people to have, especially for people who aren't like mega into sci-fi. Because as someone who's not super into fantasy, like I like fantasy stuff, don't get me wrong, but I sometimes have the same general issues where usually I will just fill in the blanks of like, I kind of get basic Tolkienisms, I've read Lord of the Rings. I know the vibes. And so then like when I like for the Galarian Pathfinder world books, they're always so nice because I'm like, oh shit, this place is so cool and detailed. And it fleshes out an area, they build out some really dope lore, and I love them. So, more lore books like that, and they do the main thing a tabletop book like that should do. They promote creativity, and you should always walk away from a book like that with character ideas.
Yeah. Lore wise, why giant mechs and not a bunch of nerds sitting at desks hacking each other mainframes like Shadowrun? I mean,
They
that
do both.
is happening like literally all the time. Hacking is a major component of Lancer, in fact. Hacking is just not like it's just not like open warfare, like hacking is a significantly different like it's difficult nowadays to hack into some systems, even people's basic computers, unless they actively let you in. It's really hard to just break into someone's computer.
You
Like,
do need to sometimes just get into like the actual system. It's a reason why all those like major leaks that happen, like the Grand Theft Auto stuff, those leaks happened because the guy got a flash drive into Rockstar. Like that's how we did it. You got to get that. You got to get a thing into the building to get into a port. And there are mechs that do that. If you want to look at it, just type in Goblin. Look at that at ComCon. That is the hacker mech. It is a half-size mech. It is a mech very built for hacking. And yeah, there's you can hack through the OmniNet, full on like computers jack into the Matrix, or you can just you know plug into a door, get hack into it, do all that stuff.
yeah. For what stops someone from remotely hacking into a mech and causing it to turn on its allies? Sometimes that
You
happens.
can.
Uh,
There's an ability for that.
it depends on the defense mechanisms of the mech in question. And even then, it's on the scale of Lancer pilot mechs. So, like, even the dumb mechs, even the mechs like the Blackbeard, which is so, like, it's mostly an analog mech by all standards. Like, it does have a lot of tech running through it. That thing would have like a black box and so many hard things to actively get into that it would take something super high power. Like, you can't just do it from like a home computer. You need something
No.
with immense processing power, like another mech or
Yeah,
like
the
a tower.
best example, like one of the abilities that lets you do that is the license level 3 for the Minotaur mech, which is also another main hacker mech. Um, Honestly, that's the mech that if you really want to set up your just a big old boy with every single hack option, you play Minotaur. Minotaur has a tech action you can take called Slave Systems, where you make a tech attack against a hostile character within your systems, and you can force it to take an action of your choosing. One of them being you can make them make like an improvised attack or a grapple on an enemy, like or just anyone nearby, or you can make them like boost or ram, so you can like make them run into something. I know there's other stuff you can make them do, like you can make them move into terrain that is dangerous. Like you could just make them move into something that will hurt them. Like there are options for that. It is a thing. It is just it's still a mech system, so like it'll take over, and it's also a game system, so you can't just take over a mech permanently.
Well, I mean, that's what the question is coming from, is like,
Yeah,
why
from the
in the
lore
setting
section.
is it this way? And we already explained all the reasons why. It's just not as easy as you think it is.
Yeah.
Plain and simple. Like, even nowadays, even current hacking is not as easy as people think it is.
Another one is the Osiris class NHP for Goblin, which is a really hyper powered AI. NHPs are kind of AI created from Eldritch mathematics. And if you go through like an entire big old thing, you can change a target's allegiance. You do take over the mech. This will only be used for a round though. It'll be active for a single round.
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to Lancer in general, it has so much to offer. I'm not surprised at all that it has been a very consistent like force in the TTRPG space. I think what holds Lancer back is literally just money in the end of the day. Just money to produce stuff, because
it definitely feels like it's made by a small team.
I wouldn't say it feels like it's made by a small team. I mean, the art is insanely good. That's something that most small teams don't have access to.
Small team with access to like a couple good artists.
The rules are also pretty solid, honestly. If you take out the pilot part, the rules for the mechs themselves, like there's some broken things, but mostly works really well. Are like there's so much that like it has a pretty decent community behind it, and they fully support third-party content, which is super cool. But I feel like the only thing that keeps Lancer like out of the major gaming sphere right now is just lack of availability in like game stores and stuff like that. They don't even sell physical copies at the moment, I don't believe.
I can't wait for that to change.
So
if I see that at like, if I see it at my local like hobby shops, I'll be so happy with the Dark Horse release.
And don't worry about that one guy. There's a whole nother chat going on Twitch. So
yeah, we have Twitch and YouTube.
Don't feel like you're the only one chatting. If anything, we appreciate it. Grenades that splash nanobots. Yeah, in fact they have that, and in fact, pilots can have access to stuff similar to that as well.
There's a nanite mech called the Baylor. It is a mech that is made out of a pure nanite swarm. That is an infectious nanite swarm. It's also pretty cool.
Yeah, and to be fair, in this day and age as well, there are like actual systems for getting rid of nanites and preventing nanite damage. That's why many of the Nexus weapons, because most Nexus weapons are nanite based, don't just instant kill a mech with like a forever poison effect, because most mechs have some kind of like native impulse or something that can just that like ends the nanite swarm as it comes in contact with the system. So it's in an age where nanites are already a thing, so there's obviously defense mechanisms against nanites.
Yeah, like there's they can do like nanobot swarms that like repair ships, like not full Necron tech, I will say. There's no like, to my knowledge, I don't think there's living metal like in the full aspect of it, because it's something very interesting about Lancer that I appreciate is that I think Lancer is in a really fun state of futurism where it's like there are really interesting limits on the future tech where it's like, okay, yeah, sure, we have like eldritch shit and like weird AI stuff, but no, we don't have full on like these other weird crazy stuff. Don't be ridiculous. We can't travel faster than light like this. No, we have to set up gates for it. If we're doing anything else, we have to go like almost near light travel.
Yeah, and to be fair, like a lot of it already takes a lot of these kind of thoughts into consideration, because like a lot of the things that are coming out like are ideas of people who don't natively have to deal with this kind of stuff. So like a nanite swarm seems kind of impossible to deal with. It's always like the gray ooze thing, right? Well, yeah, so a future civilization who has invented near speed of light travel is so advanced beyond our comprehension that like basic concepts in their setting just make no sense to us whatsoever, because we just don't have the concepts. Yeah, they have things against these. What protects against from EMPs? We have things nowadays that prevent EMP damage. I hope you know.
if we get a big old EMP going off, it's not going to be as cataclysmic as some people would like to scare about.
Like we already have currently anti-EMP tech.
And then it's just amplify that for a bit higher.
Yeah, and then I mean they have hard light, which is like super crazy. Getting somehow protons to form physical barriers, or pseudo-physical barriers, plasma barriers more like, is pretty nuts. So like they already have tech that just you can just consider that it's an arms race, like it always will be anyway. Whenever a new weapon comes out, some kind of anti-measure will be in store, But it doesn't mean that these things don't work. It's just you have to. They're scaled up on a Lancer scale, and they are not like permanent. Like there are EMP effects in Lancer, but rather than like completely frying a system, it like trips a switch that shuts your mech down to avoid any cataclysmic effects, and then you have
Yeah,
to
it's
reboot.
like when you it's like when you short something and you have to go reset your circuit breaker, or for video game term, you shoot somebody with a plasma gun in Halo, and then it's like, oh, my shields are down. Let me let it reset.
Yeah. And I mean, like, like a lot of this isn't even far jumps in logic. Like, a lot of it just makes sense. I mean,
that's what I like about Lancer with like its tech is I feel like when I'm reading through Lancer's like what tech is available, I'm like, this makes sense in like tech
well,
progression. In some aspects,
a good
there's
amount of it does, not
the
all of
casual
it.
stuff. Don't get me wrong. I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that makes sense. Like there's a very special note of gravity generation where I'm like, this is really interesting. Where like we theoretically can generate a gravity field. Why in the fuck would we? We can do it so much more efficiently with like centrifugal energy and like orbiting around a planet and like do all these actual real ways to generate gravity artificially on a ship. Why in the world would we waste our energy reserves doing it artificially? And also, Harrison Armory wants to put it in a gun. And
Yeah.
it's like, all right, fair enough. And it's like, oh, how does this work? Well, okay, we got some weird math from another dimension. Okay, now wait a second.
Yeah. I mean, in
Who's
Blink
this?
Space
Who's
is
this raw guy?
so. Blink Space is so fascinating as a
Blink Space is
concept
pretty cool.
because it's almost a negative space in a sense. It's a dimension that doesn't have the same qualities that our dimension has. So when you travel through the dimension, it's like teleportation, but you're not bending space. You're literally going into another dimension that just does not have the same rules that our dimension has. And
it's very
it's crazy.
similar to like the webway or the warp from like 40k. The only difference is like there's not a demon waiting around the corner waiting to like shank
not even true because you don't like you can't really I mean you can and you can't kind of exist in Blink Space. It's because there's no space in Blink Space.
There's no space in the warp because time in space is meaningless there.
Well, yeah, but you are like you can be in there and have like a shield protecting your ship, you know. But that just you can't do that in Blank Space in comparison.
Yeah, it's just that's the method it at least works in 40k is the reason you can be in there is you have a ship that at least enforces an element of reality for the ship. It's just the apt comparison of you kind of go through another dimension, which is like,
but that's
the rough understanding of it.
Right, but that's like the only similarity. Blank Space is fascinating because it is
very cool.
It's just something that it's a dimension that has no rules that we can comprehend. In fact, you cannot observe Blink Space, but it has like it has it's like a parallel dimension that you can access through like different like there's different blink gates, right? So they have to have some kind of coordinate and you can connect blink gates through some kind of coordinate. So there's like kind of a concept of dimensional access, I guess, but it doesn't really work that way. It's very fascinating. It's very cool. Something I really like is so that's where imaginary numbers come from. Kind of, yeah, actually.
A little bit. You're not wrong.
It's like it's kind of like the concept of antimatter. It's negative space where it's not nothing, but it's not space. So it's whatever the opposite of space is, which is like something that's like mathematically possible but not observed in the universe. Well, in this universe they have it, and that's, you know, the blink dimension. So it's there's some really cool stuff, and not only that, but like they have like cold fission and all kinds of different energy sources that, you know, far surpass like a lot of, like you were saying earlier, like why would we make a gravity device when we can just use centrifugal forces? Like, well, when you have an energy source that produces like several planets worth of energy per second, then you can have a gravity device if you wanted to. And then it becomes more reasonable to have that rather than a giant spinning space station.
Let me
Because
find the segment, because I'm pretty sure because in the book there is a segment on gravity generation that is directly like they just think it's a waste of time to work with that. But like I think that like there's just the tech is so fun. Like that's the part of Lancer that's so cool. Is I think it's one of the most engaging sci-fi worlds that I've like delved into, where I'm like, okay, so how does that work? And then looking into it, I'm like, oh, like just reading through the tech, which is something I don't always do. The first thing I look at is, okay, how does faster than light travel work? Because that's the big question you always ask. That's the important question. It's just, all right, how do they go faster than light? Okay, blink gates. How does that work? But what the fuck is what is blink space? Oh my god. Oh yeah, they do not have the, there it is. Artificial gravity can be generated, but is unstable and requires a massive expenditure of energy. Unstable artificial gravity can be created in safe containment as a momentary impulse. As a result, it has been weaponized by manufacturers like Harrison Armory. That's the other reason, is they have the tech, it is short-lived, takes a lot of energy, and is better suited for weapons at this point. Which I do like that they point out, like, we're still working on it, which is cool. I like that. Like, you build because that's another issue I've had with some sci-fi universes, where it feels like they build the future tech and then they just stop working on tech. It's like, okay, we're done. We did better than they did in the past.
yeah, I mean that's a great thing about the setting too. Artificial gravity might exist in a stable state somewhere.
377.
No, I'm saying like in the setting.
Yeah.
Like this could be just the general. Like you wouldn't see it most of the time.
And then there's the stuff about like before the calendar got reset, because there's a whole element too of humanity developing tech and then locking it away during the giant civil war that fucked up Earth. So there also could just be some dude in like a generational ship that is way far away that like he developed artificial gravity and it's completely working. Their ship is thriving, and no one has found the ship yet. Because like because the travel just takes so long because there's not a blink space gate over there yet. Which is the other aspect I really enjoy. It is so fucking nice to see a sci-fi universe actually deal with the ramifications of having to go at near light speed, and like that space is big. Space is big, and like the idea of core worlds that just, sorry man, you don't got a blink space gate. It's gonna take us a while to get there. And also, by the way, because you're traveling at near light speed, I hope you're willing to never see the people on this planet again. Yes, time dilation is a thing. I love that those aspects are in Lancer, because I never see that in sci-fi. Yeah. Also, yes, gun.
Extrude gun.
The best mech.
It was so funny. We had a comment earlier on my review of Lancer, and one of the most absurd things, like they don't have a mechanic for time dilation. It's like they do actually. There's actually just a straight number you can relate to any time spent in near light to real space.
Yeah, I didn't. I thought there was. I didn't.
Yeah,
say
it's like I think it's like a 1-to-5 ratio or something like that.
I could have sworn I saw a number to it. I thought it was like a 1-to-10, but
it might be like, 1. I don't remember. But they
do
have a number for it.
Part of me was just like, imagine rolling up to the session and your GM pulls up the actual like mathematical equation.
Right.
We're gonna punch some numbers.
No, the book actually does provide like what near light is generally, like what time dilation is.
Yeah, I think it's a system that is really cool. But I do also look at it as a system that's very heavily opt-in, because I think that some stories will just not suit it. Because at the end of the day, you're telling a story, and not every story is going to be suited for like, oh yeah, bye NPC, we're going far away to this planet. We'll come by the time we come back, you're going to be dead of old age. We'll see your grandkid.
Yeah.
Not every story is suited for that, so you can just kind of hand wave it. But I think for other stuff, it just I think it can lead to some really interesting stuff. And as someone who likes to play characters that are very heavily in the idea of like the decision to become an adventurer is the stupidest idea you could ever make, because that's just let me go join a profession where the like 90% chance I'm just going to get killed on the job is like, okay, what person makes that decision? And so like I especially in sci-fi where it's like, yeah, if I'm gonna leave my planet and go exploring in space, most likely I'm literally never gonna see anyone on my home planet again. Like who makes that decision?
Yeah.
I just think that that's a fun question to answer and explore. So I really love that it's there.
Yeah. I what I really like about Lancer as well is like the to be a Lancer pilot, you have to be someone exceptional. Not anyone can be just a Lancer pilot. It's something that like you have to train for, and you have to get augmentations for.
Means you don't have those fucking characters that are like, what's your character trait? That I don't want to be here.
Right, yeah.
Ugh.
I mean, not that we necessarily super followed it in our game, because like one of us was like, oh, my mech just came, destroyed my town, and took me in, and I became a psychotic like worshiper of my mech. You know, like you can take it as much as you want. It's your game, but I appreciate the very least that the setting itself says a Lancer pilot is someone who is the cream of the crop, either like engineered to be so or insanely skilled to be so, because
it implies that you want to be there and that you're invested in taking part,
or at the very least there's a purpose for you being there.
Yeah,
even if you don't necessarily like, even if your character doesn't want to be there, it might be just the, oh yeah, but see, the thing is, the guy who cloned me kind of put me here, and if I don't like, if I decide to run away, he's gonna press a button, my head's gonna explode. So, you know, I guess I'm here, or it's like all you have ever known.
I there's just, you can make some fun character stuff. I'm excited to like down the line in the far future, because I'm already just obsessing over it since Lancer is something I'm fixated on right now. To one day be able to play my Horus Cell mechanic, who he just works for this tiny little Horus mechanical group called Hand Horus Acquisition and Development, where they steal mechs and then develop some weird paracausality bullshit for other mech stuff. They are involved in weird eldritch math when it comes to how mechs work, and then he makes custom parts for stuff. And he's a Pegasus pilot. Because it's just like, I just, oh god, I love Horus stuff, and I want to really play around with like, specifically the idea of playing around in an organization that like is just so non-organized. Like, what the fuck is happening with it? And the setting itself is just kind of like, what's going on? They're my favorite like corporation in that game.
But yeah, so like I feel like if Lancer gets more money somehow, it will blow up in the space. I feel like it's despite being a D20 system, it doesn't feel like a D20 system.
I do forget constantly it's a D20 system.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's a D20 system, but it doesn't feel like a D20 system. It's modern enough. The artwork is good. The setting is full of infinite potential, and there's an obvious desire for it. If you look at the almost rabid community around Lancer, there's people out there who do nothing but fantasize about their Lancer characters all day, every day. I think it's a great game. I think honestly, it has a potential to be like the next big thing. Like, not saying it will surpass D&D,
No.
but the big thing rarely surpasses like things. Like when you're talking about the current era of like the next big movie, you know, that everyone will be talking about, they rarely break records, you know. But I think like this could be the next big game where like everyone is talking about Lancer because it's super cool. Everyone has their quirky pilots that do different kinds of things, are built in different kinds of ways, and have all kinds of wacky space adventures. And you know, like one of the best parts about it, like one of the funny parts about the pilot being such a non-substantial part of the system, you can kind of just do whatever you want to the pilot themselves. As long as they can strap into their mech, like it doesn't affect the actual gameplay. So, you know, you can just have an event where you're just like, yeah, he kind of got shot in the face and his brain's a little borked. We're putting it back together, but for right now, we're just gonna put him in a casket inside of his mech suit and hope that works.
That's how the first 40k Dreadnought was made. We're just
Yeah,
gonna hope this like sticks together.
I mean, that's how a lot of Armored Core pilots are for like 4th generation or whatever.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because 626 is like a near lobotomized individual who is like turned into a living corpse for the sake of piloting a ship that has some semblance of a personality, but you know, nothing is ever explicitly said in the game other than just what you choose to do as your pilot. So, but yeah, 626 is just like a near lobotomized person.
There has to be a personality, otherwise Rusty wouldn't be calling me buddy.
Right.
There has to be. Damn, do I re-download that game at some point? I immediately had absolute, like, the most beautiful, I mean this positively, Vietnam War flashbacks, but like in a positive way, to I Won't Miss. That fucking scene. Ugh.
It's so good.
Cool. That game is fucking rules. I gotta finish my New Game Plus playthrough. I got like halfway through. But you know, like I do think like the way I put it is I think Lancer, I don't think it's the best tabletop game on the market because I still think Pathfinder 2nd edition is the best designed game. I will say Lancer is my favorite. It ticks a lot of my personal like marks of just what I want in a game and what I want in a setting. It just does a lot of things right. And some of the issues I can see in it where I'm like, oh yeah, I can acknowledge that that is a flaw in it, but I can look past it. Like they're not super major. As someone who I do like rules light. I really do like those systems. I am excited though, and I actually really hope that if they ever get the chance to do a Lancer 2E, I do hope that they give the pilots a little more crunch though. And also do a little more to I give more world information and make it a bit more like detailed and fleshed out in a better way. Because I think those critiques levied at Lancer is very, very fair. But it's definitely like my favorite. It's in like my top 5 of like all time favorites.
For sure. It's in my top 5 for sure. And yo, Derek, what's up? You know, honestly, I don't think they need to do a 2E. Because the pilot stuff can just be added onto the system without...
They could pretty seem... Because, like, what are they replacing, realistically?
Right, yeah. Like, whatever you mechanically interact with is mostly mech-related anyway. So as long as the mech-related stuff remains, I mean, they can just add more stuff to the pilots, you know? And, like, they just need to come out. Like, if anything, I would see, like, a remaster of the core book. And not, like, a remaster. Like, Pathfinder's current remaster... where they're kind of changing some names and things like that around. But just, all right, here's the book. We've laid it out a little bit better, and we've dedicated more to, like, building concrete things for you to hold on to for developing, like, a setting.
Mhm.
So, you know, that's all I think they need to do, honestly, and I think it'd be very easy. I think Lancer is a polarizing game. If you like sci-fi anime robots, you'll probably like it. I mean, yeah, I understand that kind of, but it's more like polarizing, I think, would indicate more that like it has such a love-hate, like you either absolutely love it or absolutely hate it. The people who don't like Lancer, I don't think hate it. They just aren't interested in it.
I think there are people like the harshest criticisms I've seen are just people who don't mesh with certain systems of it. They're just like, these parts, I'm just not as big of a fan of it. It's never been like I hate it. A polarizing system would be like Candle Obscura. That's polarizing. Lancer, I have seen at the most just heavy criticism. Some better, some worse. Yeah, like in my eyes, but I mean,
Okay.
I at least think that there's a lot in Lancer to enjoy, and it depends on what you enjoy though. I think at the end of the day, if you enjoy like very tactics heavy war game stuff, you're gonna get a jam out of it. As someone who comes from that background of like war games, especially like Warhammer 40k, and then get some kill team, it's very kill teamy in a fun way. It's also nice to play like there's just a lot of elements that I notice that are kind of similar. That I'm doing the same things I've done in like war games. I have never heard of Eclipse Phase. Please detail that for me as I look it up in another tab. I'm curious. I'm always putting more tabletop games in my radar. God, I threw out the top 5 and like, all right, my actual top 5 tabletop games. Lancer, Anima Beyond Fantasy, Pathfinder 2nd Edition. Fucking. You know, as I'm saying these, I'm also like in that now stuck where I'm like, what tabletop games have I played though? That's my other issue. Also, CompCon is fantastic. CompCon is probably one of the coolest tools that they have. Just the idea of just, hey, here's all the player content in like mech building stuff for free. And then all those like other books that they dropped, there's like, yeah, you can download the CompCon content for free. That's so cool of them. Probably more than a session, and yeah. Because we've done these amount of one-shots. I do think Vampire the Masquerade is an interesting system. I wouldn't call it one of my favorites because I think it's like it's a system that you have to like play for a long time and have somebody running it that's like obsessed with VTM and it's like mega goth. Post-human space opera, conspiracy horror, think altered carbon, but the reason body swapping is common is that Earth fucked by eldritch AIs and people that digitize escape. That sounds hype. That sounds very cool. Okay, I'll put that out more on my radar. Hell yeah. I guess. Damn, I only really have like strong opinions of my top 3. I don't know what I'd put in my 4th and 5th favorite tabletop games.
Yeah, you know what?
I just can't remember.
I heard y'all talking about it, and I was like, since Pathfinder 2nd Edition and like Lancer, my bar kind of got raised for tabletop.
Yeah, that's the problem.
And like, it's because of that I'm like, those are really the 2 games I think are like legitimately really good, and I could play a ton. It's not that I haven't played. I played a lot of tabletop. I mean, I've enjoyed, you know, Monster of the Week is one we've been playing a lot recently. We just got done with a short campaign for Vampire the Masquerade. I played a lot of the White Wolf games back in the day. Scion probably being one of my favorites. Exalted was probably like one of the first ones I really dipped into in the White Wolf game. Deadlands was a lot of fun, but definitely had a lot of problems. And yeah, there's just a lot of games I've played, but like the bar got raised with Pathfinder Second Edition, and
Uh,
Lancer just barely clears that bar as far as like mechanically speaking, very, very fun. There's just some aspects that prevent me from like wanting to dedicate like a super long campaign to it, purely based off of like world setting stuff mostly.
yeah. I will give 3 that I'm gonna shoot out into the universe. These are perspective favorites that I one day want to see if they are. 2 of which I have not played. I have read through the core books and I think they're really cool. Fist, because Fist is very interesting. I just it's such a cool system, and the character creation is really fun, and overall I think it'd be a really fun time. And then Age of Sigmar Soulbound. I'm not even a fan of Age of Sigmar, but like I think it portrays Age of Sigmar really well, and I'm really happy that it fleshes out like AOS and represents the factions in a cool way. I think the mechanics are genuinely really interesting. I'm super curious about it. And then Fabula Ultima, I would love to do more of it because I think the game was really fun. I
Yeah,
hope they do more.
I was the one I was just thinking of because I think Fabula Ultima is really good, and what I think it
Yes.
does somewhat unique. I'm not gonna say they're the first ones to do it, but somewhat uniquely compared to other tabletop games. I like the build your class style of you dip into certain archetypes for so many levels, and your character is a combination of characters by the end. And I think that provides so much fun build potential and so many different ways you could add to your character. Some level ups can be more combat orientated. Some levels can be more like either efficiency or quality of life or even like role play orientated. I think Fabula Ultima, if they just fine tune it some more, would be really good because Fabula Ultima is kind of like a pseudo crunch game. It's got some crunch when it comes to your character stuff and all that kind of business, but there's not a lot of depth outside of combat necessarily. And again, another setting that doesn't have a solid world to build off of to like get the concept of like how to run your characters.
Yeah, it seems much more built on the idea of like there's a lot to randomly generate a world, but I think if they had like a base world in like the core book, it might do it some better, like
Thoughts
just some benefits.
on Shadowrun? I think Shadowrun
Mm.
is an incredible setting
The setting is very cool.
built around an incredibly chunky and unwieldy system. If
I
you
hard agree.
if you love super chunky systems, then Shadowrun's for you, for sure. Uh, for me, it's just a little bit too crunchy for me to properly enjoy it.
I'll say like we did a one shot on the channel for Shadowrun. Shadowrun's a system I've looked into for a while. I think the book I like you used wasn't that my book? Didn't I give that to you?
Yes, yes. I mean, you
Yeah,
can take it back anytime.
I don't need it. I'm not gonna run it. Uh, so like I I got that book at like a Black Friday deal. I like it. I read through it and I was like, this seems pretty cool. Um, Playing it, I did not have a fun time with it. I thought the game itself was just it wasn't my thing. It felt really crunchy, but crunchy in an annoying way. And I was like, there are so many things going on where I'm just like, I don't like interacting with this system at all. This feels really annoying to work with rather than like fun. However, the world itself is one of the more interesting cyberpunk worlds I've looked into.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I did. I forgot to mention as well. Anima Beyond Fantasy is probably like my number 5. I think it'll always be like my number 5.
I would be upset if it wasn't, but Anima is a busted, stupid system mechanically. If you want
Yeah.
a good rundown of that, by the way, if you check out my channel, Glue Boy, I do have a video on Anima Beyond Fantasy. like how stupid that game is. If you want to go watch that, it is how the best way I feel like you could describe Anima is it is the greatest game that you should never play. Like don't play it, but
It's
like
like
keep an
my
eye on it.
favorite 6 out of 10 game. Only Anima is
Yeah,
more like my favorite 4 out of 10 game. It's like, I'd give it a 6 out of 10. If anything,
it's a
because
better
it's
six
got
out of
heart.
10.
It's got
It's
heart.
got a lot of heart in it. Like the thing that's one of the things that I genuinely appreciate about Anima is that like the entirety of it, I feel like the creators they care so much. And like
Yeah.
there's so much passion and but also to the point where it's so clear that you're reading through a power system and you're like, you got this from an anime. You watched some anime and you just tossed it in your game, didn't you?
Also, you did not you did not run any play tests to balance anything out.
No, not the
I
slightest.
yeah, there's so many things, so many missing tables, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. Like, it'll always be my number 5 because I feel, well, one, to date, it is the system that I've run my best tabletop in. And like,
Yes.
not even close. I love Pathfinder 2nd edition, and I've not had anywhere near the same level of campaigns as I've had in Anima Beyond Fantasy.
Uh, oh, actually, Devin does put it. Does put it. Number 4 is Star Wars: Edge of the Empire. I adore that game, despite me not liking Star Wars. The dice system is so good. It's such a good dice system. God damn it! I wish other games had it. Legend of the Five Rings. I should have just stolen it. It made me so upset that like going through it, I was like, damn, this is so adjacent. Imagine if it just was. The whole time I'm just like, so they took the dice system but made it simpler. Lame.
And actually, so we have an interesting conversation going on YouTube. I do think that's actually a very fascinating thing, of the idea of like the optimal setting kind of being in the 90s for a TTRPG, like just before the technological internet age, but still like advanced enough to have like, more modern guns and all that kind of stuff. I think that's fascinating. I wonder what that era is going to be called, because I know that's going to be
Yeah.
like a used era for future TTRPGs.
It definitely
Like,
has to be.
Pre-modern probably is what they'll call it, like the pre-modern era. Like there's
Or
Victorian
like,
era, which is
I
like
think
the late
it's
1800s.
because I know I've seen it thrown around as calling like exactly like the Millennium Shift is just calling it Y2K. Like just that is the genre. Like it
Yeah.
hasn't been widely used, but just calling it that like pre Y2K even like pre-modern like because I'm a person where I think that like 90s vampire like is great, like specifically like 20th edition Vampire the Masquerade is very cool. I also think that just the added complexity of a modern world builds to some of the really interesting things that a vampire has to deal with just in the themes of World of Darkness. I think it builds onto the fact that like the theme of that entire setting is that all of these like groups, their worlds is slowly decaying and dying as the human world grows and grows. And so humans getting more technologically advanced builds more
Post Matrix
complexity.
era.
Post Matrix, post and pre Matrix. I like that.
That's funny. But yeah, because like legitimately talking about it, like yeah, it's a very interesting era because computers were a thing in the 90s. DVDs, all that kind of stuff. Like a lot of technology that was revolutionary at its time, that got so quickly outpaced by like the computer era, that like I can definitely see that being a general setting, the new Victorian age, as it were. Because in the Victorian age, they were like, "Oh, we're in the Victoria age," I wonder when that phrase got coined. I'm actually very curious.
When Victorian became
Like
a
the
thing.
Victorian era or age was coined. Yeah, only 90s kids remember the 90s. So I think pre-modern is what I would coin it as, the pre-modern age, where like it sounds absurd for people who grew up in the 90s, but when you really like take a step back and look at the big picture, it was exactly like pre-modern, because computers were becoming a thing, but internet was slow. Cell phones were becoming a thing, but they were not nearly as advanced or capable. I mean, plenty of people back at that time were still using like film cameras, and cars were like in a good place. Guns were like in a generally good place. We haven't really advanced too far in a lot of those kind of areas, but it's just like a lot of the modernities that we take for granted nowadays. It's like cable, or even just being able to chat with your friends on internet used to be way more difficult. So, you know, pre-modern I think is what I would call, but I don't know. It's very interesting, a very interesting idea, especially in this chat where we're talking about Lancer being in the post-scarcity future, which I think is a very fascinating setting in its own way. I think it's something that's very hard to conceptualize for people nowadays, though, because people are so used to the idea of like having war over resources when resources are essentially unlimited. You know, what do you do? Where's the conflict?
Yeah, it's the same idea that Star Trek plays around in, is like, because like the idea of it is humanity has fixed all of like its problems on the home front, so then they're spending most of their resources exploring, and like that's where the next step is, and then all the problems that come out of it is in that expanding like universe, which at least on Earth is a post-scarcity utopia, and at least like it's very cool. I also, just coming from a 40k standpoint, it is nice to see a giant, very powerful government, but actually is like built up of cool people. It is nice to just be like, oh, this is kind of nice to
Kind
see.
of.
Union is solid. The people around it is.
There's some factions in Union that are not all on the same page, but
oh, 100%. The core tenets of Union, where it's just like, nice. I'm happy that people in Union there are people that are trying to make sure people are treated well. Coming from the 40k standpoint I see you look like you're thinking bad thoughts, and then you just shoot him in the face.
Yeah. I like early digital age too. I think pre-modern it would be more what I go, but early digital I think is also accurate. I also like the acronym EDA as like a easy acronym for it, because postmodern is just PM, which is not super good, but or not postmodern, pre-modern. But I don't know. It's there's a lot to love about Lancer, and I really do feel that, as especially because, you know, it's an actually, someone kind of mentioned loosely, we're kind of getting into an AI age now, and Lancer's setting will become more and more like poignant as the years go by, as AI starts getting developed more and more, that its setting will feel, if anything, more realistic to people in like 5-10 years, which is crazy.
We'll know for sure if something just comes out of like a non-dimensional space and steals the moon.
Right. But I think Lancer's good. I think Lancer has a lot to offer. And like, again, just because this could be the next big game doesn't mean that everyone will be playing it. Again, it's like, there's so many big things that have come out that I just, like, movies I didn't go see, games I didn't really play. So, you know, it's not like just because it's the next big thing, it's going to be the thing that overrides all things. It's just going to be a thing that I think like a lot of people are going to get really into and talk about. And I don't know, tabletop's kind of in a very strange era of especially with AI advancement and the innovation of VTTs, because legitimately, VTTs are becoming crazier every year. We've been playing with Foundry, and we just got all our characters kind of set up on Foundry. And besides some of the oddities, the things we're just not used to when it comes to using a game, VTT like it's got a lot of nice stuff in it, honestly.
It is very handy.
In fact, so much to the point that making characters, we were accounting for things that we normally would have to, fucked up our character sheets. So it's like we actually had to do less pre-work to make it work smoother. Which
some of you guys who actually built your characters instead of Path Builder. That's what I did. I just used Path Builder. I was done in 40 minutes. And honestly, it took me 40 minutes because I kept getting distracted.
And honestly, something I really am thinking will be a thing more and more in the future. And I know so many people absolutely hate this idea because, of the old era of tabletop. But honestly, I can see some good future tabletops that, like, necessitate online resources. Like the use of things like CompCon or Path Builder, Things where you can track systems that would just be too tedious to do by hand, honestly.
I adore systems like that. I really love CompCon specifically because I think it's really fun to also kind of make it a little in-universe feeling. And it's so easy to use and it works so well because it just makes me want to build a character, which is, makes me want to interact with the game more. And then it makes me want to get more people into the game because then it's so easy to get others into it, where I'm just like, oh, hey, want to get into Lancer? Yeah, just go look at CompCon. Here's the link. Just explore.
Yeah. And CompCon is one of the
it.
nicest sites I've ever seen. And
it's similar with Builder. I think Path Builder is equally, like, really well done. The devs on that did a great job.
Yeah. If I'd knock anything against Path Builder, I don't think it's as its UI is necessarily as good as CompCon's.
Oh no, CompCon is like peak. I just think like Path Builder is very good, but yeah, it's gonna take leagues to get better than CompCon.
And so, like, I really feel like the future of tabletop is gonna have digital aids of some kind, and that's something that I think about a lot because, as many people are like, but what if I want to play at home with my homies or whatever? Or if we just prefer the pen and paper? It's just like, most phones are computers nowadays. You can just pull it up, an app on your phone. That's not gonna cause you any problems. And the thing is when you start adding digital aids like that, you can start adding more complicated systems to tabletop that just gets automated, And there's the people who are like, but I don't want to play a video game. I'm not saying a video game. I'm saying an aid for what you're playing on the tabletop. Management of, like, XP is a thing. Because, like, I love games where the more you use a thing, the better you get at it. But in tabletop, that's dumb to do, honestly. Because that just creates a bunch of bookkeeping that slows the game down. Or just gets confusing. But if you have a digital aid, you can just be like, bam, click a button. I use the skill. Every time I use the skill, I hit the button. There we go. I don't have to keep track of it.
Also, like, if you have a digital aid, like, it doesn't erase the fact that you can probably still track down pen and paper shit. Because, like, they might still have, like, a sheet. But then, like, if they have a digital sheet, maybe they'll have more complicated shit going on. And then I could see, though, in the future, some games pushing, be like, yeah, we're the first game to not have a physical character sheet. Which that'll be interesting to look at on Twitter.
Well, one of the best examples for a digital aid that I've been thinking of a lot is, like, a kind of like what I do for our games, like a monster catalog, where if you run into a creature and you make knowledge checks on the creature, I give you guys more information. That's harder to do on Foundry Funny rather than Roll20. But just imagine a digital aid where we're all in a game. There's like a monster thing where players can look at your phone to check like the monster stats, what status conditions they have, or whatever. And as the GM, I'd be like, oh, they got that, and I hit like a tooltip, and all the players got that pop up for that creature that they can go into their book and look at, rather than like needing to copy paste something and putting it into another section. You need to create a different kind of file. There's so many ways that gets very tedious when you're doing it by hand, especially. That digital aid that can allow you to like discover monsters and like have an easy source to look at their stats would be really cool. And
yeah, there are a lot of tools like that. Like one thing I always thought would be really interesting is just having tools like that for both Monster Compendium and NPC Compendium stuff. So then like players, while like a GM is doing something, they can just quietly like in that moment be like, okay, I don't fully remember what this is. Let me double check. And then like they can quietly look at it and be like, okay, yeah, I remember what that is. And then like they didn't interrupt anything and they can now take part a lot better in that moment. Because sometimes you just like genuinely are like, okay, who the fuck is this character? Why everyone seems to care? Like they were maybe like, did something happen that I wasn't here for? And you're like, oh no, they just slipped my mind. There we go. And so you have all these player aids that like could be really cool. That it's just a little harder to do when you're physically like doing everything.
And there's also like another complaint I see a lot of times: managing of statuses and conditions in games.
Oh god, yeah, it's aggravating. Physical Foundry is a lot. Foundry and Roll20, but Roll20 does it a lot more like abstract symbols. The Foundry stuff where it pops up with like, you are now poisoned.
Yeah, Foundry, and it'll automate some of this stuff too. Like your turn will end, automatically roll your flat checks for you, if you have.
That was really fun.
If you have the mods for it, anyway. So like I feel like in the future, tabletop's just gonna get more and more blended into digital stuff, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. In all honesty, it just allows tabletop to have more complexity, less bookkeeping, and overall less guff between player turns and actions. And for the people who cannot separate that idea from the idea of like video games, I don't know what to tell you. It's obviously very different than a video game, but yeah, that's now just built into the main Pathfinder 2 system. Yeah, it's really good. It didn't used to be that way. But we've been using that. And I was saying more for the case of like other things, because not everything is 100% automated through the core Pathfinder system yet. Islands are still a pain in the ass to utilize. It sucks, but like tabletop, the fun of tabletop is imagination, and as long as these digital aids provide manual overrides, so you can like create homebrew items, for instance, or adjust a character stats based on something that happened in the narrative, then it's all good. As long as there's no locks on that kind of stuff, then it's just tabletop with extra aids to use. Foundry's revolutionized my Pathfinder 2 experience. Status tracking is one of my favorite parts. Yeah, my game tonight, I'm a summer, and I had to remind my GM to get the companion mod for my island. The companion mod doesn't work super well, though, sadly. We use color-coded poker chips underneath minis for statuses. I mean, there's ways to do it, sure. But like when you're a GM, it's just hard to keep track of a lot of that kind of stuff because you're just managing so much. And even when you're a player, man, you're thinking of you're in your mind palace. You're playing the game, right? Sometimes you forget to look at your token to make sure what conditions are there.
Yeah, stuff like comes up and happen. Like the one that I'm also I like the digital tools a lot more is because it helps me with realism elements, because y'all have heard me on TableTalk talk about this. Fuck realism in tabletop, like carry weights, rations and all that. Hate it because I think tracking all that, erasing it off my sheet because like, did you have 14 rations? All right, make sure you erase that down. Mark it down that you ate today. It's like fucking okay. I could just erase. I could just say that I bought rations and then not write it down and save the paper. It's annoying, but like with a digital tool, it's so much easier. That's the way I like it too, because you can just do inventory tracking and have it
Yeah.
just be so much easier. And also, it tells you what the weight is, and then you can be like, ah, fuck, okay. It's not the game. The sheet itself is telling me my encumbrance. Hey, buff character, carry this.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, like, and that's only good because who likes managing that shit, you know? Like,
I
people
don't. I
always
can't imagine who does.
act. This is, I hate the idea of worse interpretations because, like, everyone's just like, oh, but when it's like, we had this discussion about shooting arrows, right? And tracking your ammunition. And it was something that's like, it's realistic, or well, range weapons have advantage over melee weapons because you don't need to use actions to move, you know, which is just in Pathfinder especially factually not true. Like maybe at a super long distance situation, sure, maybe against flying enemies, maybe, but like in a general combat situation, it's never that big of an advantage to worry about tracking ammunition, and that isn't fun anyway. So, and not only that, but magic just trivializes ammo. So it's like, why would I have a bow that runs out of shots when I can just use magic?
True.
And yeah, it does depend on the game for sure. There are games where that is the point, but the thing with like D&D Pathfinder, survival is not really the point. The point is the adventure. So dedicating whole systems to a thing that mostly gets hand waved anyway. I mean, legitimately, how many people actually worry about rations that much? Not many. So why is it even there? You know, it comes up when starvation is actually a concern.
Yeah, and if you have like a mini arc where you're stranded on an island and now the fun is like, ah, fuck, we're on a dangerous island, our magic items are gone, and we have to like scrounge up and like restart kind of idea. We have our cool powers, but like we don't have the equipment to be as powerful. Yeah, that's a cool idea for a couple sessions or even like a little mini campaign. That sounds sick. But like that's the moment you would run that specific type of rule set. But if you're like hyper powered heroes and stuff and you're like level 19 and then you're like, well, you did not buy your rations, so you're starving to death now.
I mean, if I can look at a deer and shout at it and kill it, what's hunting?
Yeah, it's just assume that I did.
Yeah,
it's it's Oregon Trail rules. You know, you just shoot a fuck ton of bears and then you carry back 100 pounds of meat.
And that's not to say that survival settings are not fun. They are definitely fun for sure. It's just kind of like right place, right time. Use a system when it's relevant to your game. Anima has a politics and legal system, and it's so fun that it's there, but we actually never used it.
My problem inherently, it's this thing I also get really annoyed about when it comes to horror games. Because I notice this when it comes to horror games and some tabletop games when I'm like reading through them or playing it, where I notice there's just a weird sense of that some people have that feel like tedium is game design in some way, or tedium is tension. When no, you are making me do busy work. Like me just having to like erase my sheet endlessly in like, okay, I have to make sure I keep track of these 15 normal ass arrows. And then when we get to shop, make sure I set aside 10 minutes of my friend's time to go track down an arrow salesman so I can talk him down. But oh no, I have 10 gold. And I have to like talk him down from his asking price of 12 gold. And like go through all that time when instead just don't fucking worry about it and save everybody the trouble. It's a thing in screenwriting called shoelacing. you assume that your character in your story will tie their shoelaces. You don't need to film them do it. And so I have the same mentality when it comes to anything else. Like for horror games, there's that one game, Mortuary Assistant, where I was playing through it and I'm like, this entire game is just tedium, like bullshit work. And so like I was bored like just doing the gameplay. So when the scares started happening, nothing was scary because I was just annoyed at the gameplay. And that's what I feel like for a lot of tedious survival tabletop rules. Like I feel like it's similar shit. There's a time and place for it. I don't think it's for every situation that it comes up in.
Yeah, and in the situation of Lancer, because it was mentioned that, the whole post-scarcity thing was one of your least favorite aspects. Like, I get that, and there's ways in the setting that you can justify having scarce resources. We talked, you probably weren't here, but we talked earlier about, like, being in a program that helps settle worlds, and needing to operate on a world that doesn't have a lot of the same advancement that you would find on more core worlds and stuff like that. Like, you can easily implement into your games things that are necessary, but when those things are implemented into games where they're not necessary, then it becomes a hindrance. That's all we're talking about. We're not talking about doing survival games. No, and in fact, we both have easily said, nah, those are cool, they're fun, for either like a section of a game or as the core concept of a game. But when it's like a Power World, right? We've been playing Power World, well, not lately, but when it came out. And I love the game. I love collecting the creatures. I love setting up the bases to get resources. I absolutely hate that food goes bad.
That is annoying.
The absolute worst concept in the game, and it doesn't add anything. I'm fine with food being in the game. I'm fine with food being a thing, feeding your pals, especially if you have pals that are doing a lot of work. Like if you have a base and like your effective pals are mining stuff, getting better food actually makes them more efficient because they spend less time eating. That's a mechanic that I can get behind and invest in. Food going bad just means I need to make absurd amounts more food. And the fridge or the cold box don't help because they're not food boxes that the pals eat out of. So if you put food in them, you're still not feeding your pals. You'd have to put food in it and then take it out to put it in the pal box, or the food box, where then it's just getting bad. That's a mechanic that did not need to be there in the game, does not help, and just should be removed. I'm an old grognard. I love games where survival is scary. Games have moved in to ignoring the basics and shopping for magic items. Magic item shops didn't used to be a thing. You got what you got. You can still play that way. If you don't like how a game does it, then either change it or don't play that game. Yeah. It's like, that's like saying, I don't like how in old games I struggle to survive because I needed to go work in a quarry to get money. All I want to do is fight stuff. We only get to play like once a month. Why is most of my time taken up by survival busy work when I just want to play the actual fun part of the game? Like, that is equally as discounting of what you like as your discounting of what people like about the new stuff. You know what I mean? It's okay that you like that. That's fine. There's people who prefer OSR style of like surviving the game is the difficult part. When your character got to level 10, it was an actual accomplishment because of how hard the game is. That has value, and that's completely fine. You liked how magic items were more specific? Sure, that's cool too. One of my favorite game types is roguelites. And in roguelites, you don't get to pick your items on your run. You just start your run, and you just hope you get something good. And whatever you get, you just kind of have to work with. And I enjoy that. it increases the replayability. But like when it comes to like a longer run TTRPG game, I don't really have that same level of replayability. So those same aspects become more of a tedium than they become anything beneficial.
I mean, it's something I've also ranted about on Table Talk a good few times. Is if you like don't like something in a system, you can always just kind of futz with it to make it your own. Because if like you look at something, you're like, everything else is so cool. Man, I wish this wasn't here. That sucks. And then you continue to run with that thing you don't like. You should just alter it. Your book isn't holy text. You can fuck with it. Like the company isn't holding a gun to your head and forcing you to run it. Also like, it's also I'm sitting here thinking like, man, I do want to try out one of those like older OSR style games real bad. Like I just want to have the experience of playing one of those like just once. Though the idea of like a meat grindery campaign where I don't just play one character the entire time does turn me off immensely. Cause like the idea that I've heard of all the from old Grognard types of the like yeah, I've played through this game's so hard and I have my character and I have like 20 characters and they're all just one letter off of like their names and they're all like siblings. It's like that's not fun. I want to play a character, not a character sheet. But also that's dependent on the campaign itself because I imagine there are games of like even like AD&D that weren't like that.
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
a lot of the representations was like here. That's what the loud types represent their games as.
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is like that's the funny part is about all this. Like what I try to do here on this channel more than anything is validate as many ways to play as possible. If you would like tabletop, I support that. I support how you I support how you play it, what you like about it. And most of the time I can at least empathize and be like, yeah, I like that too. I dislike the idea of saying I don't like how new games do this, because you know what? There's people even now, right now, making older games that are more survival and resource intensive. Right now, it's what the whole OSR movement is more or less about. With some obvious differences between each individual creator. So it's like there's games out there currently being made for you or in the process of being made, and it's not going away. So it's just like, man, I'm eating so well right now, but man, do I hate pineapple on pizza. Like that shit shouldn't exist. Like it's fun to make fun of, sure, but in the end you're already eating good. No one's forcing you to eat pineapple on pizza. It's just plain and simple. Like I completely agree. Old core like old survival styles of TTRPG stuff where you had to fight to keep your character alive is interesting because it creates a different level of tension. It creates a level of tension where you have to really like dungeon crawling was a dungeon crawl. You had to go through, watch every space. A game I've been playing recently that's been similar like this is like Barony, right? Barony is such a fun game because it is a very intense RPG game where you have to be very careful. You have to peek around corners, make sure there's no falling traps. When there's an enemy, you have to do risk management. Like, do I want to engage in this thing? It has loot that I might want, but my build's already looking good and I'm already got some food, so maybe I'll just avoid this fight. Like, did you bring your 10-foot pole? Yeah, the 10-foot pole. The item that that so many campaigns used a ton of, because it's just like, yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you bring a 10-foot pole when you're going through a dungeon?
Yeah, it's useful.
It like, I think that it has fun for sure, but I also think Pathfinder 2E without having to worry about rations is also fun, so like I'm so for it. Don't get me wrong. I think old like the hardcore survival is a legitimate way to play the game. I just think that like saying you hate what other people are enjoying right now just means that you are probably unaware of what's actually available to you to play. In which case, I'm not the best source for that, but there are plenty of channels that are. But in the future, maybe we'll be able to bring more of that kind of content to you guys as well. Does anyone use the lifestyle expenses in D&D 5e? Yes, I'll spend gold to be put in a suite, or I can just metagame and just spend copper to sleep in a barn because there's no penalties. Yeah, that stuff, like, don't get me wrong. I think we've used that kind of stuff before, like, because it's fun to say, oh, my character has a house, and it's not super expensive to the point of being detrimental to maintain, like, a house, actually. That's fun. But I definitely think that, like, base building needs to be a bigger aspect of TTRPGs too. Having actual,
it's something I see in like older TTRPGs and CRPGs, and I'm like, I never got to experience this. I kind of want to though.
Yeah. It's something that, like, I feel like it just requires a very specific campaign structure to work around.
It does.
So, when new games come out, I hope that a lot of this stuff gets more taken into consideration. Again, digital aids would be really good when it comes to managing something like your business in the game or your living situation, where you don't have to remember, like, also one of the biggest annoying things to keep track of in TTRPGs, keeping time, actually. Ugh. We implemented recently a little time thing in our Foundry, and you know what? Honestly, I'm a little hyped for it because I can just be like, okay, this takes 10 minutes, click the little, like, single arrow. This takes an hour, click the double arrow kind of thing.
It's kind of fun, especially for vampire, because that's very big for vampires. I'm really interested in how it's going to work for Pathfinder.
We'll see. It might add some stuff to it, honestly.
Yeah.
And it'll be less guesswork now. So, like, digital aids, I think, can enhance even survivability stuff. Because you can do a lot of the fun survival management stuff, but spend less time, like, actively managing each of the stuff on your character sheet. You know what I mean? So, there's so many good ways and so many great game styles, and I think Lancer is going to open it up for a lot of people, because for a lot of people who are just getting into the TTRPG space, Lancer's going to feel so dramatically different than anything they've played before. Like, the tactical combat will feel familiar, but, like, sight lines, use of cover, how the turns even work are going to feel so different. And even the pilot stuff outside of combat, like, it's going to get people to kind of invest more in some of the RP elements of it. I wish, again, they had a little bit more use, but at the very least, we had some fun with some of the non-combat stuff. The downtime stuff in Lancer created some very interesting storylines.
It did.
Even if a good portion of it was improv. I mean, that's just where we got Space Robert Downey Jr. So.
True.
There's, like... And the great part about all this is the more modern some games are, even OSR games can benefit from it, because it takes a lot of effort to account for all the variables of actually existing in life. If you've played things like Caves of Cud, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's a very intense game. And that's another game where getting your character to a high level is actually an achievement. Mostly you do it through cheesy tactics, because that's just... You figure out the strat, and then you just cheese the game as much as possible. But up until finding the cheese strat anyway, like, there's a lot of that stuff that can just be transferred into player aids for games, you know, where a dungeon can be pre-generated for a bunch of things, where you have an app that randomly generates loot that you don't know the name of until you either succeed on a roll or have someone identify it for you, and then it generates it for you rather than the DM having to pick an item, maybe based on where you found it, maybe just from a random table. Like, it can be something that's even fun for the GM because they might not have even chosen it for you, kind of stuff. If they want to choose an item for you, they can, because that's tabletop and you can just do things as you want. So, Lancer, like, even with its post-scarcity stuff, creates the interesting storylines of, okay, but what if you're in a world or in a setting that has post-scarcity, but then you go somewhere that doesn't have it anymore? What does that change?
That was a point I was going to bring up specifically, too.
You know, or even better, in an era of post-scarcity, why are there pirates? You know? And that's because while resources are near unlimited, things like science and technological advancement are not. So things that become valuable are no longer things that have monetary value in the normal sense, but rather things invented by people that are like not known to a lot of people that can be bartered with.
Because specifically too, like the idea of it post scarcity world, like you're also a lot of your adventures are not going to take place in specifically areas that are going to be like that. You're going to be in a lot of diasporan worlds that are outside of the core worlds, and visits to those core worlds. You can have some cool adventures there, because I think you could set missions on core worlds. I don't think their existence and how they're written in the setting means that like you can't do anything with it. I think you just get creative and come up with something fun. It's a tabletop game. Just invent something. Use your brain.
I mean, Anarchy. It's a great example of people who just don't like the system and want to rebel against it.
I mean, people in peace and prosperity, naturally, there are just people who want something to fight against and want to feel important. Or people who feel like they can get something out of it, so convince other people that they're doing something. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do that you can come up with cool concepts for. And then other than that, or you could even have a planet that is a perfect utopia to really iron in the point of like, this is the disparity between some worlds in Lancer. Because sometimes you need that narrative bit where this is the difference, these are the extremes. Like, just showing that is a big deal.
Well, and there's even like concepts like people don't want perfection, because when everything is going right, like it's like the mice experiment where they had a bunch of mice, and one set of mice had everything they could ever want all the time, and the other set of mice had to like work for their food, and the mice that had to work for their food actually lived longer. You know, that kind of stuff, where there's people who live on these perfect utopian worlds who just want to stir shit up because they're bored, because everything is provided for them. There's nothing, they need that kind of like friction in life to feel alive.
Yeah, and you can just come up with stuff. You can
see
you can just write.
And this is the thing that I think Lancer really needs to do, is provide these problems and scenarios and show the readers what actually can go wrong in this kind of setting. I think that's something they don't do enough. And again, they don't have, like in the core book especially, they don't have like a core like world system, whatever, that you can work off of, that you can see the problems and what it is to work on. And that makes it hard for your first campaign. Like the Long Rim answers some of this with, you know, because it's not post scarcity in the Long Rim. And Solstice Reign goes into, okay, but what if a world government is keeping the universe as a whole secret from its people, you know, and is trying to like manage its population? with information control.
Which is a really cool concept.
You know,
I think that is true, because there are people who do need like just that push, because you have like those little bits, you get blurbs about some planets, and then like I think Anima did that, where they had like possible they had like little areas, like here's some cities that are in this area, and here are some possible quests that you could do in this area.
yeah,
Like,
points
like
of
that.
interest and story seeds.
Where it's like, oh yeah, because then someone looks at that and then they get like, oh wait, that gives me an idea, because they can look at it and be like, okay, not exactly this, but what if I do this and then build on it a little bit and just like take that next step, and then boom, suddenly they got a really cool like mission idea.
Yeah,
Which that'd be really cool. I think that's an important thing to do, which I at least think they could solve if they make a Lancer world book. Just if they make a world setting book. Also because I want to buy that.
Yeah. See what they have. See how they would interpret, the setting and what can go wrong. Because that's also interesting. I mean, this also opens up the opportunity for third-party content creators to make, some very cool, like, adventure paths or even, like, planet settings. Because, right, like, that's the great thing about having a whole universe, and not even technically a whole universe, it's an arm of a galaxy.
But space just is big.
Yeah,
so.
To fundamentally work with it's so fascinating that like a person could make a whole world with important people who could even be technically important to the corporations, all of it, and it wouldn't step on the toes of the setting. It couldn't. It's impossible. It's on too small of a scale to affect it overall. But that is going to be it for today. It's I'm very excited about Lancer. We'll be talking more about Lancer on the channel. And I'm hoping eventually we'll do another Lancer campaign. I'm honestly itching for one. After I've been doing a lot of this reading and a lot of like research, I feel a lot more capable of creating content. And we'll see if the new physical books creates an increase in interest in Lancer. And I don't know. I think we're at a very interesting period of time where in the next handful of years, we're going to see some big changes in the tabletop scene in general with innovations. And because, we kind of already have, since like the mid 2010s, tabletop has been growing vastly. Like Foundry has been becoming more and more of a really functional product. It's all some work, but it's becoming very, very functional as time goes by, and people are investing time and effort into it. So, I think we got some great stuff to chat about.
Yeah. Which I will mention, because it was just dropped into chat here. Yes, third-party content is actually pretty cool when it comes to it. I will shout out. This was a comment I received. Basically, I think is really useful, because it's the first time I got a really good like set of info for this. What I've been told, if people want some fun content to like jump into when it comes to the like third-party, best places to jump into is the Grim & Sons.
Yes.
The Waffenfabrik Zawalski, Field Guide to Solden. Those are three fantastic ones that, at least according to other people, and then specifically this commenter, sometimes reading through it, you kind of forget that it is not canon material. It is just very high quality. So give that a look if you're interested in third-party mechs and stuff.
And I'll mention as well, because someone mentioned talked about it. Yeah, D&D actually has officially gotten a Foundry pack now, so yes, you can now play D&D in Foundry. They're still doing their own VTT, but it makes sense to invest in something like Foundry for people who might not want to hop multiple systems.
They need something lower spec, to be honest.
And to be honest, if they put it in Foundry, they're not going to have to make a majority of the shit for it anyway.
Oh God,
someone else will. So, you know.
That's the normal D&D method, though.
Right? Why make a game when we can just have the community make our game?
Oh, too real.
But anyway, that's gonna be it for us. Anything you want to leave us off with before we head out here?
Yeah, if you any part of this stream have been interested in getting into the lore of Lancer, or even just are into 40k and Vampire the Masquerade, I cover that on my channel. I do lore content rather than direct rule stuff. My channel is Glue Boy. It is linked in Cam's YouTube, or just look up Glue Boy on YouTube. You will find me. I put out a video just today as an overview of Lancer, basically just giving the vibes and the general overview of it. So yeah, if you're interested at all, go check that out. I think the video is pretty fun, and I got some more fun content in the works. And other than that, keep an eye out. There's a big collab that I'm going to be taking part of for one Bones 40k. So keep an eye on that channel if just in case you want to see my contribution to it in the next like few weeks, or see other up and coming 40k YouTubers, because I'm definitely gonna keep an eye out and find other people that I think are interesting in there.
Yeah, and funny enough, because Robert here said, "FY, I found you through Lancer content, so it's working to at least reach one person." Yeah, I just made a Lancer review video, so hop into that. Tell me what you think of the review. I wasn't super happy with it, if I'm gonna be honest. I might end up reshooting it, but if it works for people, then all the better. Share it with your friends for anyone who might be interested. I will be doing next week a why you should play Lancer video, which I'm a lot more hyped for because that's a lot more of a fun video to make. And
That is a dope topic, specifically because the answer is you should.
right. And as well, you know, this year there's going to be a lot going on the channel. Like, we have books, we have new Pathfinder books coming out pretty much every month after this month. So
Cool.
it's quite a lot. I put in for a requests. Oh, you know what? Oh, wait. Oh, yo! Okay, so fun fact. I don't think I'm in embargo for this. So I recently, through their creator program, just applied to review some of their product stuff. I put in for Monster Core, which is coming out soon. Next month it's coming out. But I also put in to review a copy of a new board game they put out, Pathfinder Elemental Stones, and I just got a confirmation that they've sent my package out. So I will be doing a video on the board game for that as well, which is super cool.
I will have something to look forward to next time I come visit.
Yeah.
Hopefully the game rules.
Hopefully it's good. It's been a little hit or miss with some of the Paizo products, but I've heard good things about the Goblin Firecracker Bomb one. I can't remember what it's called. I heard good things about that one, but I'll be reviewing Elemental Stones here soon on the channel, in addition to everything Paizo related, in addition to whatever other tabletop stuff comes out this year. So with that, that's gonna be it for us, and we'll say good night.
Good night.
Good night.